Welcome to Lockdown Minis. I'm Richard, and in this video I'm going to be talking a lot about airbrush versus your standard bristle brush. I wanted to make this video because I've been speaking to a few friends and also a few other people just about using the airbrush, and also what I use the airbrush for, and really can forking out for an expensive airbrush and compressor, can it be avoided, and can you just use a standard brush? The answer essentially is yes. I'll go into that in a bit more detail. I'd also had a similar conversation with my brother, who also has a painting channel. If you want to check him out, he's called Broken Minis on YouTube, and I'll put a link somewhere on the screen and also in the notes below. I've also done 2 videos as well on my take on Space Marines. So I've painted a number of Space Marines for my own army, and I've done them in a very specific way that really captures my idea of Ultramarines. And I've painted two minis. One I've done my standard way of painting these minis, so with the airbrush and then some bristle brush work. And then the second mini I have done it entirely with the brush. So the only thing that I've used that's not a bristle brush to help doing these, to help paint this model, is actually a rattle can, just to get an undercoat on. So all that you see in that video, if you don't have an airbrush, don't worry about it. You can just go ahead, as long as you've got standard paints and a dry brush, then you'll be perfectly fine. I used a dry brush. It cost me about a tenner, so it's a decent dry brush, but any dry brush will do really. Obviously the results may vary, but I've done both of these videos, and I'll be putting them on YouTube at the same time as this video, and I'll put links on the screen for you at some point now, and I'll also put the links down below as well. When I'm reading about airbrush and people saying it's cheating, or it makes everything easier, or you're not as talented a painter if you use an airbrush, and I just think it's all ridiculous. If it is cheap, quicker, why wouldn't you do it? If you're painting a ton of minis and it's a quicker way of painting them, why would you not use the airbrush? Like, it makes perfect sense to use the airbrush when you're painting en masse. And a lot of the time I'm painting en masse. I'm doing a lot with Ultramarines at the minute. I've just picked up, obviously, the Indomitus set, which I've got videos coming for that soon. So there's a whole bunch of minis in there that all need painting, and if I did it all with the bristle brush, it would it'd take me some time. So for efficiency and for saving myself some time, I'm going to use the airbrush. It's as simple as that. I also wanted to talk about in this video really my take on using an airbrush and how I paint, because I use the airbrush for very specific tasks. I don't use it for everything that I do. I still rely on standard paint brushes, and I think that will never leave me. I think I'm not the best painter in the world, by far, but I think I've got some good techniques going, especially with dry brushing and a standard brush. My take really is with an airbrush, I'll use that to do my primers, and the reason why I do that for my primer as well is, like a rattle can, you have to be outside because of the chemicals in it. You can't spray it inside, and there's certain temperature limits for that, and it has to be not raining. Whereas with an airbrush, I can literally I can go upstairs, I can sit at the desk and I can lay down, you know, whatever primer you know, I need to do, and whatever colours I want to do at, you know, any time of day or night, regardless of weather, and, you know, regardless of the temperature as well. So it has massive benefits to me, and you know, it'll probably have their own you know, benefits to yourself. But mainly what I use the airbrush for is the priming, followed by base coats of colour, and for a lot of my blend work on main pieces of armour or materials or bases, pretty much large areas, you know, the smaller, more detailed areas, I'm obviously going to use a brush for that. So in the case of ultramarines, I use the airbrush to prime the model, and then I use it for 2 shades of blue, ultramarine blue by Vallejo, which I paint over the entire model, and then I use electric blue by Vallejo just to add highlights to the model in certain places. And then after that, everything that I do is with a standard brush, and you'll see that in the video as well. And it just works right for me. I'm not restricted, like I say, by weather or you know, temperature or anything like that, and it saves me time. You know, when you're painting, you know, squad after squad after squad, the airbrush is just so much easier and it's so much quicker. And if it is cheating, then, you know, I cheat. Like, you know, I'm not gonna argue that. Like, if you think it's cheating, then I cheat. Like, it gets good results, and that's the way that I use it. So I use both, you know, to help me paint, and I think that's the best way for me personally. I know people that just use airbrush and then small bits with a bristle brush, but I also know people that only have access to a bristle brush, which is, you know, which is fine. You know, you put your primer down with your rattle can on, you know, a nice weather day, and then crack on with the brush. Yeah, it takes you longer, but you don't have that money investment, and you know, you can get the same results if you spend enough time on it. Pros and cons for airbrush. I think, you know, I've mentioned most of them already. The speed, you know, it's definitely easier blends. You know, it's quicker to do. The blends are easier. You know, as long as you know where you're putting your highlights are easier, and they look really nice. But you know, there are some areas that you can't do with an airbrush. You know, it has to be, you know, bristle brush, unless you've got the tiniest needle in, you know, in the world. You can't really do Space Marine lenses with an airbrush, or if you can, then, you know, I want to know about it, but I doubt it's going to be easy, and you know, it's probably easier to use a paintbrush in that case. So I'd say pros are, you know, the speed, the ease of using it, and you know, some of the effects that you can get with an airbrush are brilliant, with, you know, blending and highlights, particularly because the air tends to move in one direction, similar to light, which means when you spray from above, it only captures the above areas, and therefore you get this similar lighting effect by using an airbrush. Cons wise, you know, cost. You know, I use an Iwata Eclipse CS airbrush, and I think when I bought this, way back years ago. I think it was, you know, £160 maybe, and that was an upgrade for me from a cheap Chinese or Japanese airbrush that I bought off eBay, and that cost me about £12.50 or something like that. And that was a replacement airbrush from that set that I bought, where I spent £80 on eBay, and I got a compressor and an airbrush for 80 quid years and years ago. And that compressor, by the way, lasted me for ages. I only recently had to upgrade that and replace it because it packed in, you know, and it lasted me for years. So if you are trying to get, you know, into airbrushing, then, you know, start off with a cheap knockoff off eBay or, you know, Amazon or something. You know, a nice cheap set. You're probably looking, you know, around about the £100 pound mark. One of our friends recently invested and got an airbrush and a compressor for around about the 120 mark, I think he said it was. You know, and if you're just getting into it and you're just doing a few models, then that's probably the way to go. You know, it's the way that I did it, because I didn't want to invest a lot of money in it. I didn't know if it was going to help me, if I was going to be good at it, if I was going to use it that often, you know, how many minis I was going to be painting at that time. And really, you know, it progressed from there, but I wouldn't have wasted, you know, that much at that point. You know, I could buy 2 of those sets for the price of the airbrush that I've got now, so, you know, it's it was an easy option at the time. So going off topic there a little bit, but the pros and cons, obviously, cons being the cost of getting into it. You know, you can buy a set of paintbrushes from Army Painter, you know, good paintbrushes. I use Army Painter brushes, and I like using, you know, their brushes. They're typically, you know, my go-to brushes. I have started upgrading my brushes, but again, I'm not spending masses of money. You know, you can get a set of decent brushes for under £20. You know, and that's a hell of a lot cheaper than a compressor and an airbrush. So, you know, if you're thinking about whether you should pick one up, whether it's going to help you, you know, whether it's going to give you the effects that you want, or if you're thinking you can't get the effects that you want with a brush, then first of all you need to watch these 2 videos that I've got. These 2 Space Marines look almost identical in paint job. Like, you have to look to see, you know, to see what the differences are. And I've shown a few pictures of the models to people. I'll try and put them in the video as well. But the dead giveaway was the overspray from the rattle can, the Citadel rattle can, black primer, which you can only imagine how much of that stuff you're physically wasting when you're spraying these models as well. So I'd say another pro really is, you know, the paint that you'll save. Painting the ultramarines, which is, you know, the next point that I want to discuss, was a joy for me, actually. I've played 40k for some time. Me and friends got into it as a side game from fantasy. You know, we were really into Warhammer Fantasy, and I chose Dark Angels to play, but I always had a love for Ultramarines, and I don't know why I didn't go for them in the first place. Must have been something about Dark Angels that I wanted to get into that, but yeah, I've always had this love for the Smurfs, and I've really enjoyed painting them. I've really enjoyed finding the effects that I want to get from these models, and these videos as well haven't took me that long. You know, these models haven't taken me that long to paint. You know, in the grand scheme of things, these are a pretty quick paint job, both for the airbrush and for the standard, you know, bristle brush. Obviously, it's taken me a little longer with the, you know, getting the same effect with a dry brush, but in the grand scheme of things, like these look almost identical, and they haven't taken me that much time. And when you put them in a group, they look really good. You know, they're not the best paint job because I'm trying to get through masses of models, so they're quite a quick paint job. I'd say they're battle ready. You know, or maybe a little more than battle ready, but they look good. Could I do better? Yes. Did I want to do better? In an ideal world, yes. But for the time taken and for what I wanted to achieve, which was a quick paint job through all of my ultramarines, then, you know, I can't argue with that. Both of these videos are, you know, when I put them together, they explain everything that you need to do, how I do it, some of the colours that I mix to get the effects, from start to finish as well, from, you know, everything from the base, the armour, the weapons, the lenses in the helmets, you know, everything. It's all in those videos. But to conclude this, really, because I'm recording this straight off the bat rather than doing voiceovers later on. I wanted to keep it under 15 minutes, and we're well over that already. But to conclude it, you know, do you need an airbrush? You know, if that's the question you're asking, do you need an airbrush to paint good minis? And the answer is no. You don't. You don't need a good airbrush. You don't need an airbrush to paint good minis. You know, you can get the same effects with a brush. Does it take a little more practice? Yes, of course it does. And does it take a little more time? Yes. You know, but if you want to spend your money, you know, elsewhere, if you want to buy more minis rather than, you know, buying an airbrush to paint the minis, then, you know, get the brushes out. You know, leave the airbrush, don't buy one, get the brushes out and paint more minis. You know, if you're looking at doing just one army and that's it, it's just your army for you, no one else, not for videos, you're just going to paint these guys, you're going to put them on the table and you're going to play games with them, and just use brushes. Like, it'll save you money, which means you can buy more, you know, tanks, you can buy more marines, you can buy more orcs. You know, how many orcs can you even get for 80 quid these days? You know, it makes sense. You know, get the brush out and just paint these guys. If you're doing more, if you're planning to do more, if you're painting on a regular basis, if you're doing multiple armies, if you don't plan to stop just with your own army, if you want to, you know, branch out and, you know, paint for, you know, videos on a regular basis, or you want to maybe try and get into you know, commission work, then the airbrush is the way forward. But it's that lump sum up front that you pay to save yourself time. You know, and that's all it is, really. With regards to airbrushes, yes, I use an expensive airbrush, well, mid-range airbrush, I would say. But I know my brother, he uses 2 airbrushes, you know, and one of them is the same as mine, and he's talking about, you know, getting an upgrade maybe, but he also has, you know, one of these cheap knockoff airbrushes, as we both do, and we use them for different things. So the cheap airbrushes, can you get effects with them that you can get with an expensive airbrush? Yes. Will it be just as good? Maybe not. Is there more chance of it messing up? Probably. And are they harder to clean? Definitely. Which is another con really of airbrushes. You've got to clean it. You got to clean it. You can't just rinse it out in the pot and then dry it on a bit of tissue and then stick it in your jar or in your brush holder. Like, you have to clean it. You have to buy cleaning products to clean it. That's another outgoing. But if you don't mind doing that and paying that, then save yourself some time. But yes, the airbrush is good. Yes, it saves time. Maybe it's cheating a little bit. Maybe it's not. I think that's personal preference. Let me know your thoughts. Like, if you think it's cheating. Personally, I don't think it's cheating. I think it's just another tool in my arsenal where I'm able to use that to better my painting. But can you do it without? And the answer is yes. You can do anything with an airbrush. You can do with a paintbrush. It probably just takes a little longer. So in conclusion, airbrushes are expensive, paintbrushes are cheaper. You can get the same result. It just depends on your personal preference as to what you want to do. And I would say, as I said to my friend who's recently invested, if you're just planning to paint a few models here and there, use brushes. If you want to invest some serious time into painting some models, then consider getting an airbrush, because it'll save you some time and it just means you can paint more models in a shorter period of time. That's the main pro, really. I mean, you will get other benefits from it. Techniques you can use, Zenithal highlights being one of them. There's techniques, and there are plenty of videos out there to show you how to use an airbrush as well. But yeah, enough of me rambling on really about airbrush versus bristle brush. I think it's going to be an ongoing debate for a lot of people, especially people getting into the hobby. What do you do? Do you want to use an airbrush? Do you want to use a brush? It is what it is. But hopefully this video will help maybe guide you a little bit into what you want and what you're going to do. Are you going to make that investment? Are you not going to make that investment? But take a look at the two videos with the two Space Marines. I should have really bought identical Marines. I think that would give a better impression of, can you do the same thing with a brush as you can with an airbrush. But yeah, check those videos out. I'll put the links in at some point during the video. You'll see those, but I'll also make sure I put them in the notes below so you can see those and just click them without having to watch the video if you're trying to just skip through like most people do. But yeah, if you like these videos, if you're checking this video out for the first time, check out some of my other videos and subscribe. Click that subscribe button. It makes me know that I'm doing something good, knowing that you want to see more, and the only way I know that you want to see more is when you click that subscribe button. Click the like button as well, because who doesn't like to be liked. And ask me some questions. I'm more than happy to help with absolutely any any subject. But yeah, check the videos out, like, subscribe. I'm also on Instagram, so you can find me on Instagram at lockdown_minis, and I regularly post update pictures of work in progress So check me out on there, give me a follow. You know, I'm trying to put stuff on as you know, often as possible on there, so there's something between videos. But yeah, check those videos out, and I'll see you next time. Bye.